And by sitting on your ass, in your own apartment, on your sofa, you don't bring any changes to the world. This is a continuation to the video about dark triad traits, acquiring power and advancing in life. And this time, Niccolo Machiavelli will tell us why nice guys fail at life. And I will be of course commenting on what to do instead.
Machiavelli was a 16th century Florentine political thinker with powerful advice for nice people who don't get very far. His thought pivots around a central, uncomfortable observation that the wicked tend to win, and they do so because they have a huge advantage over the good. They are willing to act with the darkest ingenuity and cunning to further their cause. They are not held back by those rigid opponents of change, principles.
I wanted to point out that those people who are cunning and perceived to be bad are winning at life not because they are bad, not because they lack principles, but because they are very ruthless with their goals. And the way that narrator says that those people lack principles doesn't necessarily hold true. They have clear principles and they abide by them, getting there by any means. Also, principles is an extension of social contract between people, because oftentimes those kind of principles stem from morals. And morals are impossible to uphold if there's no commitment from the big masses. But behind the closed doors, nobody sees those commitments. So their obsession to reach those goals dictates their direction.
They will be prepared to outright lie, twist facts, threaten or get violent. They will also, when the situation demands it, know how to seductively deceive, use charm and honeyed words, bedazzle and distract. And in this way, they conquer the world.
One point here, manipulation is a two-way street. You won't be able to be manipulated if you're not susceptible to it, meaning you are open to be persuaded. For example, those telemarketers got nothing on me because every damn purchase I make is a very conscious choice by me. I make a thorough investigation before putting money on something. And in that sense, I am closed off to manipulation for that specific area. Same goes for seduction. It's a form of manipulation. You won't be able to be seduced if you're not open to it. I have a video on seduction. You can watch it here. Only after watching this one, of course.
It's routinely assumed that a large part of what it means to be a good person is that one acts well. One doesn't only have good ends, one is committed to good means. So, if one wants a more serious world, one needs to win people over through serious argument, not clickbait.
Clickbait! Another point. Clickbait is a manipulation, but is a form of harmless manipulation.
If one wants a fairer world, one has to judiciously and gently try to persuade the agents of injustice to surrender willingly, not through intimidation. And if one wants people to be kind, one must show kindness to one's enemies, not ruthlessness. It sounds splendid, but Machiavelli couldn't overlook an incontrovertible problem. It doesn't work. As he looked back over the history of Florence and the Italian states more generally, he observed that nice princes, statesmen and merchants always come unstuck.
This is a Hollywood and Disney narrative that we have going on today's era. People, for the most, being offended for small things. One of the biggest problems that I see today is that people always are trying to control others, or more correctly, control how others perceive you by implementing cultural restrictions, like trying to erase the history because it doesn't serve them the moment being. The other day I've been watching some old cartoons from 30s and 40s about Donald Duck dreaming about a Nazi world. You won't see that kind of cartoons today, but we cannot deny our history. It's something that happened to us. By denying it, we automatically reject it. And history for us is to learn from, not forget. But if you're trying to forget it, you won't be able to do it. Truth will always prevail, and trying to have a nice society with everyone being kind, compassionate towards each other doesn't work. We are human beings. We have an animalistic nature, and especially when a human being is pushed to the corner, he will show his true colors.
That's why he wrote the book for which we know him today, The Prince, a short, dazzling manual of advice for well-disposed princes on how not to finish last. And the answer, in short, was to be as nice as one wished, but never to be overly devoted to acting nicely, and indeed to know how to borrow, when need be, every single trick employed by the most cynical, dastardly, unscrupulous, and nastiest people who have ever lived. Machiavelli knew where our counterproductive obsession with acting nicely originated. The West was brought up on the Christian story of Jesus of Nazareth.
I saw a comment which is very relevant to this topic, and I think it was originated from Jordan Peterson. Something like, it's not a virtue when your nature is harmless. It's a virtue when your nature is powerful, but you choose to be compassionate. Oftentimes people who are overly nice are being nice because they lack self-esteem. They want people to like them at a cost of their own values, of their own integrity. And that strategy never works because people see through that. We are very sensitive to genuineness. We can notice it by body language, by the tonality of speech, by the mannerisms. If you're too nice, people will take advantage of you.
The very nice man from Galilee who always treated people well and wound up as the King of Kings and the ruler of eternity. But Machiavelli pointed out one inconvenient detail to this sentimental tale of the triumph of goodness through meekness. From a practical perspective, Jesus' life was an outright disaster. This gentle soul was trampled upon and humiliated, disregarded and mocked. Judged in his lifetime and outside of any divine assistance, he was one of history's greatest losers. The clue to being effective lies in overcoming all vestiges of this story.
I'll be doing more videos on popular culture, what they have produced and how we perceive those as children and how they actually are as promoters to an agenda. Like Beauty and the Beast, where Belle tames this beast, destroys his savage nature and makes him into this cuddly, nice, soft prince. A typical story of a woman changing a man and then losing all attraction to him.
The prince was not, as is often thought, a guide to being a tyrant. It's a guide about what nice people should learn from tyrants. It's a book about how to be effective, not just good. It's a book haunted by examples of the impotence of the pure. The admirable prince, and today we might add CEO, political activist or thinker, should learn every lesson from the slickest, most devious operators around. They should know how to scare and intimidate, cajole and bully, entrap and beguile.
The objection I see towards Machiavellianism is that it's very ruthless, it's not nice, it shows people from a very dark, manipulative and bad place, which is not true, because Machiavelli merely shows us the nature of human beings behind the closed doors and how they act in order to reach the pinnacles of power. The more political power, status you gain, the more dark traits you have to have, which is yet again not about harming others. Power is what it is. How you use it is up to you. You can use knowledge for good or you can use knowledge for bad.
The good politician needs to learn from the bad one, the earnest entrepreneur from the slick one. We are all ultimately the sum of what we achieve, not what we intend.
A good example is Nikola Tesla. Many praise him today because he was a pioneer in his field. But many of his findings weren't recognized as being his. At the moment being, of course. Whereas Edison was a very cunning businessman and he knew what he had to do in order to reach his goals.
If we care about wisdom, kindness, seriousness and virtue, but only ever act wisely, kindly, seriously and virtuously, we will, Machiavelli warns us, get nowhere. We need to learn lessons from an unexpected source, those we temperamentally most despise. They have the most to teach us about how to bring about the reality we yearn for, but that they are fighting against. We need weapons of similar grade steel to theirs.
The problem is people are very invested in their views, in their beliefs of life, and it takes huge amount of trauma or life-changing incidents for them to change their views and be open-minded to knowledge, especially this kind of knowledge. Having an attitude of being a lifelong student, otherwise you will always find yourself in an echo chamber of thoughts and opinions.
Ultimately, we should care more about being effective than about being nobly intentioned. It's not enough to dream well. The true measure is what we achieve. The purpose is to change the world for the better, not reside in the quiet comforts of good intentions and a warm heart. All this Machiavelli knew.
There is no point of being good-hearted in your own apartment and not affecting lives of others. We are social animals, and contributing to society, to community that we live in, is one of our biggest desires. And by sitting on your ass in your own apartment, on your sofa, you don't bring any changes to the world. Having good intentions means jack shit. What you have to do instead is to find ways to implement your ideas and influence others. Evolution of consciousness starts with one person, but the transformation happens with big masses. What difference does it make if you don't share your greatness with others?
He disturbs us for good reason, because he probes us where we are at our most self-serving. We tell ourselves we didn't get there because we're a little too pure, good and kind. Machiavelli bracingly informs us we are stuck because we have been too short-sighted to learn from those who really know, our enemies.
Our enemies. There's a saying that you have to stay close to your friends, but closest to your enemies. Know thy enemies. Oftentimes we perceive people as our enemies because we're in a competition with them and refuse to recognize their competence. Deep down we admire them and want to beat them at their game. This pureness of the heart, this unconditional compassion towards people is just dumb. Your starting point should be compassionate, yes, but you don't praise a person who is very disrespectful towards you, right? Same principle. This kind of a mindset is a typical explanation to why many poor people hate rich people. They tell themselves that they're so pure, so kind-hearted that they cannot reach those heights that rich people find themselves at. To acquire riches, to acquire power, you have to be vigilant, you have to be mean-spirited, you have to be bad, which is not true. Because as per definition, rich people, in order to become rich, has to create a lot of value to a lot of people. General, of course, I'm not naive to believe that every rich person has acquired their wealth through virtue and value creation. Same goes for dating. Nice guys are being nice because they have been taught to behave like a doormat, praising women just because of their existence, without any objective evaluation of their character. So women lose respect for them, because being a doormat implies that you're incompetent, insecure, and wouldn't be able to protect her. You have no values, no integrity, no self-respect, which makes nice guys consequently end up blaming other people instead of taking a long, hard look at themselves. If there's one thing you can take away from this video, is that you cannot control other people. The only person whose life you can really influence is the person you see in the mirror. Hossein out. Clickbait.